Welcome back, everybody. So Charo, I start about 1 minute after. Is that what you think?
Sure, that sounds great.
Excellent. Would you like me to do a quick intro as well?
Sure, that sounds perfect.
All right. Well, folks, welcome back. You've made it. The last day of the AI winter. Today is going to be a bit different from the previous days. So up to this point, you've been learning about how AI models work, especially transformer models, but also diffusion models as well. You've looked at the architecture, you've looked at the frameworks, you looked at how we can share models, train models, run models locally. So we've really covered sort of the technical aspects. But one of the big changes since the last time that we taught this course was the advent of AI assistants and what OpenAI is calling GPTs. And the idea here is that you can very efficiently and easily set up with no code assistants that are dead useful. We recently had an AI showcase at the Data Science Institute, and the top prize went to an undergraduate student who had not done a whole lot of programming, but an undergraduate student who built a system to allow people to learn how to use American Sign Language. You enter text, it would actually then come up and restate it in terms of the grammar for American Sign Language, and then could actually even show you and pull up videos to show you how to sign. Now, she did this with no code, and she did it using OpenAI's GPTs and built an AI assistant using that. That's what we're going to be talking about today. We'll also be talking, Umang will be, and this will be, Charo will be introducing and talking about that. Umang is going to be talking about how you can use code to build even more capable assistance if you do want to code. But we're just going to be introducing that framework. Today is going to be more about how you can make GPTs useful for you right now, and you're going to be pretty stunned about the things that you'll be able to do. I'd like to point out, be thinking about how you can apply this, not just in your work, not just for your classes or your research, but even in your own life. The lift is so small that you can create useful things right now that can make your life easier using these technologies that we're going to be talking about today. Great. Charo.
All right, thank you so much. So as Jesse said, today we're going to be talking about how you can create your own OpenAI GPTs. We're going to start with just a brief introduction to prompt engineering. I'm pretty sure that most people have, I would say, a solid understanding, maybe some overview, but for the folks that don't really have a background in what we're doing with GPTs, we're going to have just a brief introduction. And hopefully that will also help everyone with some strategies on how we can actually get better at prompt engineering. That's going to lead into our OpenAI GPTs in general. For this day, you do need ChatGPT Plus, but of course you can always follow along and then get it later and then review. But we will also talk briefly about how you can go about doing that. But in this current moment, if you don't have an OpenAI account, you'll probably want to go ahead and get an account. And from there, you can sign up for ChatGPT Plus. But for sure, you probably want to just visit openai.com and make an account, which is free. ChatGPT Plus is not free. It's about $20 a month. So you will have to enter some credit card information. But it is, in my opinion, it is well worth the investment. All right, so let's go ahead and get started again. Maybe my slides, I still haven't actually put them up on GitHub, still working out how to do that. But as yesterday, I will put all of the links in the chat. 100% I'm with Jesse, ChatGPT Plus, best $20 per month. I mean, expenditure. All right, so let me go ahead and share my screen and then we will get on started. All right, so first, let's just briefly talk about OpenAI ChatGPTs and their capabilities. Actually, I'm going to unshare this screen and I'm going to share my desktop so that we can actually look at mini screens together. Y'all on over to the side. All right, there we go. All right, so talking again about ChatGPT. So ChatGPT has a lot of functionality that's associated with it that perhaps are not always present in other commercial GPTs that you might find. So for number one, we know that we can always prompt ChatGPT. That's literally why we're all here, because we're able to speak in natural language to this LLM who can give us a number of responses. Yesterday, we talked about instructions, we talked about safety, we talked about all the things that go into a chatbot to get it to respond in ways that are helpful, useful, and safe for us. So most of our GPTs are always going to be able to be doing that prompting. Something interesting about OpenAI's ChatGPTs and GPT-4 in particular is that they have this capacity called code interpreter. And so code interpreter is this back end that allows for computation analysis. So for example, let's say you upload a CSV document, an Excel document, and you want for some analysis to be done. So you want to have a visualization of the types of students that are in your course. So what their majors are and the counts, or you want to see how your students are doing overall based on something that you upload. ChatGPT and through Code Interpreter, it's able to do this analysis by utilizing this Python backend that actually allows for you to do the computation. The thing that's really interesting about Code Interpreter is that it tends to be self-correcting, meaning that it will try to do the computation. If it sees that there's an error, it'll say, oh, it looks like I didn't do that correctly. The length of this particular thing that you asked for is not the length that it should be. Let me try that again. And so it will automatically try to correct its mistakes to give you an answer that you're looking for. Even beyond that, it is able to, of course, respond to any of the inputs that you give it. So let's say that it did some analysis and it tried to correct itself, but maybe it wasn't 100% there. You can always guide its analysis and see the actual output of the plots of the figures that it creates. Another nice thing about Code Interpreter provided by OpenAI in its GPT functionality is that it also shows you the code that it uses in order to perform this computation. So not only are you able to get the actual output of the analysis, you're able to get the code that accompanies that analysis for reproducibility, or if you want to use it on other pieces of data. Something interesting about this is that it is built into the ChatGPT platform now. So in the course of, if you're just talking to ChatGPT and you ask it, all right, well, can you make this figure that is, I don't know, a network diagram of these relationships? And all you've done is tell it about maybe some students and, or I don't know, your coworkers and then their relationship to you. It can create this network diagram by using Code Interpreter. Another nice thing that's built into ChatGPT is this internet lookup. So some time ago, it didn't have that. So it wasn't able to actually go out on the internet and look for information or use things that are on the internet. As Jesse was saying, we had some students that participated in an AI showcase, which is a competition using generative AI. And one of the students, maybe not in the showcase, but in our course, they actually used ChatGPT to go and use TripAdvisor to look up information about certain trips and then return all of those potential trip information through OpenAI so they could chat more about it. So it's able to use tools on the internet as well as just use the internet generally to look up information. Also, something that's nice that we see is we're able to upload information. So let's say that we have a PDF document, we have a paper, we have a user manual, whatever have you, we can upload those to ChatGPT and we can ask ChatGPT things about it. We can ask it for a summary. We can ask it to create a quiz about it. We can ask it to provide some bullet points for a slide deck or actually create the slide deck. Those are things that we can do because we are able to upload documents to it. Also, with the integration of DALL-E, it's able to generate images for us. Usually these are of the creative type. So let's say that I want to have some sort of image that accompanies some event that I'm doing. This is a great moment for ChatGPT to utilize its built-in image generation through something called DALL-E to create an image that we're interested in, again, using natural language back and forth to modify, change, and update these images. Finally, slightly cut off down here is something called custom instructions. We will look at this a little bit more, but essentially what this means is you can tailor the behavior of ChatGPT to what you as the user wants. So let's say that you always want ChatGPT to look on the web before it gives you an answer. You can put that in your custom instructions. You can tell it that whenever it gives you an answer, it should always begin by thinking by step by step. These are custom instructions that you can use to guide its overall behavior. All right, so now that we know those things, let's explore what that looks like actually on ChatGPT. Wonderful. So let's explore what that looks like actually on ChatGPT. So the website of interest is going to be chat.openai.com. And this is a great moment to leverage our teaching staff here. If this is not something that you get to, just go ahead and drop it in the chat and we can try and work this out for everyone. The reason that I am seeing this is because, one, I am logged in. So if you know that you have ChatGPT and you're not seeing a page like this, you'll want to create an account and actually be logged in. And if you're not seeing things like stuff up here, these are my own custom GPTs that we'll be talking about. But generally, these will be the history. You can see some of the things that we've been chatting about. Some of the other things that you can see here are some of the things that the students have made and used. But otherwise, if you're not seeing the screen, give us a shout so we can try to resolve that pretty quickly. And someone asked, okay, thank you for answering that. Someone asked whether you should purchase a $20 per month account today. You do not have to. And of course, you can sort of watch and see what's going on with these OpenAI assistants. But again, as Jesse said, if you want to do these things along with us, you will need to purchase that today. This is definitely not like a marketing moment for OpenAI. It just happens to be something that we have all enjoyed here and find that is very powerful. So is everyone able to see the screen? Again, I'm just going to pause for a moment. If you're not seeing this, we can talk more about what you need to get there. If you have an OpenAI account and you get to this screen, if you see something at the bottom over here that says upgrade to ChatGPT Plus, that is when you will want to do that. So you'll click on that and then follow the instructions. So is everyone feeling? Oh, someone says they can't see it because of VUMC firewall issues. Jesse, do you have any suggestions about that, or are they just going to have to watch, you think?
First of all, my condolences. Second, if you are on your personal computer, then one thing, then I would go to a non-VUMC network. So if you have a plan on your phone, so you can do a hotspot, you can do that. If there's another network which is available, then you can do that. The reason why I say personal device is because I don't want to get sideways with VUIT information security. So I would not promote doing that on a VUMC owned computer, but that is up to you. If you do not have access to it, then you'll have to watch along, but do know that, yeah, if you're on VMC networks, you're not going to be able to get to this. They have blocked that.
All right, I see. I also see some additional suggestions in the chat, so y'all can give those a read. I will pause just here for just a second, but as Jesse was saying, what we are talking about here is applicable to everyone, even in your personal lives. So maybe you have an assistant that you want to use for your kids at home, if that's allowable through OpenAI's terms of use. Maybe you want them to be able to figure out like what they need to do to, I don't know, if you have them do chores, what their chores should be or how they can do those chores better. Or maybe if they need to be able to figure out a way to create a presentation for you about why they should get a dog. Like maybe this is a platform that you can help them with. So these are things that you can also use in your personal life, not where you want to upload patient data or anything like that. But these are also very good for your personal life. Okay, so moving right along, let's explore some of the things that we have seen over here. So one, we see that we can clearly prompt. This is where we would type in literally any whatever we want in terms of our prompt. You can see something nice here, which is that it has these few little blurbs about things that you can do. So if you just want to try something out, you can always just give it a click and it will enter that as your prompt. And then here you can actually see that prompt being answered as the response. You can see the impact again of the instruction fine tuning and the preferences. And so you can see these outputs here. As a side note, if you just happen to hate how it's responded to you at the beginning, you can go back and edit whatever you've written before here. And also, if you love what it's written and you want to use that at the end, it will have this clipboard and you can copy and paste that into whatever Word document or editing software that you like. As a side note, just to know I did just say that you can come back and edit this if you hate its response here. Generally, do know that this is a chat GPT. I mean, when we talk to other people, we don't just say one thing and then just walk away. It is interactive. And so if it's nearly on base with this first answer, generally the best thing to do is just continue the conversation to get it where you want it to be. But if it is way off base with its first answer, that's when you really want to go back and just go ahead and edit that prompt to be even better. And so we'll talk more about ways you can edit the prompt to make them better. So again, that was just a prompt that we entered. If we wanted to, we can write things here: content strategy, audience analysis. It's saying content sourcing, local partnerships, regular updates, looking great. Let's say I want to follow up with it. I can continue the conversation based on this entire previous conversation. Maybe I can say, for example, what sorts of ways can I increase engagement? I can even ask multiple questions at the same time. What are some good mechanisms for getting feedback from participants? Then I'm just able to submit that and it continues on based on our previous conversation. So again, this isn't just like a one and go thing. It's not like how we usually interact with Google. It is a continuing conversation. We're able to guide the LLM in the direction that we want. So here we get our question answered, very exciting. We can as well edit those previous things. Let me get it to finish saying whatever it's saying. We'll let it do that. In the meantime, we can explore other things. So we talked about how we can upload things to ChatGPT. So we can do that just using this clip. It will go ahead and upload whatever we have, and we can just select whatever it is. This is something that we're going to look at in the future. You can go ahead and upload that. You can also upload images. Ooh, we are verbose today. So then we have gotten this answer. Let's see, fantastic. So as something nice that they've also added in is if you highlight a piece of this, maybe you have a question about the focus groups part in particular, you see that these little quotes pop up. That means that you can message specifically about this content, which is also really nice. What is a focus group? Can you explain? And then here we will also use some of our great prompt engineering patterns, which is we are not wanting to read this huge entire thing and we want it to be brief. We can just say that very briefly. We can be very specific about it in about a paragraph. a big long paragraph. All right. So it did exactly what we wanted, exciting. All right, so now we have talked about general prompting. We have talked about reference upload. We can also prompt it to leverage these tools. So something to think about or something to know is that often these computation analysis, internet lookup, and image generation are referred to as tools. And so we can invoke them as tools from the prompts that we use in a natural language. So for example, if we want it to create an image, we can say that, create an image for, what are we asking about? What are we even doing? Content for my newsletter header for local events.
And Cheryl, quick question, but as it's generating that, Carl had a question. How did you do the replying to part?
Okay, okay, that sounds great. And I will, country music. And so, and so the way that we did that, yeah, it's something that I randomly found. So you highlight whatever it is that you want to know more about, and then you click these double quotes. So then you click reply, and then it pastes that in, and then you're able to talk more about that.
Fun.
Oops, sorry. All right, so now again, through our just regular prompting, we are, oh, that's pretty nice. I like that actually a lot. If I could just fix that. So this is, again, natural language. We're invoking the usage of the tools like DALL-E to actually create this image in the same conversation that we're having. In terms of computational analysis, let's see. And usually for that, I would be uploading data, but we might be able to prompt it to get it to do something that we might like. For example, create a network diagram of the content strategy extract feedback that you have include all sources, all channels of acquiring feedback. So let's see. So something to also note is before, I think you saw it maybe thinking and it was saying generating image. That means it's pretty much using DALL-E. A lot of times when you see it saying analyzing, that means that it's using its code interpreter functionality. The thing about DALL-E and then generating images that are like diagrams, usually if it's a diagram that someone could create programmatically, I will always ask for maybe the more technical term related to that diagram. So that will trigger the usage of chat. So that will trigger the usage of code interpreter. But otherwise, it will generally try to use DALL-E. So here you can see the invocation of code interpreter. And so what it has done here, it has actually generated this network diagram instead of using DALL-E to do so. Someone says they can't see the images that ChatGPT is generating. Generates an image with a description, but the image itself doesn't show up. Jesse, any ideas about, or anyone, any ideas about that? I haven't seen that very often, except for when it's just taking a second to show up.
Yes, so I would check browser. We know that it works in Chrome. And we might during the break we might do some troubleshooting.
Okay, that sounds great. All right.
Safari. Okay. Might try to just to troubleshoot, see if it works in Chrome. Yeah.
Okay, so we have seen the usage of code interpreter here when it generated this network diagram. again, something that we said about Code Interpreter is that it is creating Python code to make the thing that you want. And so here we can actually see that code. So if we want to paste it into our favorite Python development environment, we can actually do that here. Interestingly enough, we also see this error, or not error, but some output. Something that's fun about that is that this is how, or a component of how Code Interpreter does its iteration when it makes a mistake. Sometimes you'll see it say, oh my goodness, like I ran into this particular error. It is because it is actually running this code to make this happen in the background. And so like when we're running code in our normal IDEs and our normal kernels, it gets the same kind of error that we do. And the same way that if you're a coder and you're working with generative AI and you're in your IDE and you get an error and you paste it into ChatGPT to ask it what to do, it does that on its own. It sees the error and it utilizes that to actually correct its own mistake. All right, so we're able to get code, we're able to do analysis, we're able to get images, we're able to prompt. We saw that we can upload references and ask questions about them. What else? All right, we can also do internet lookup. And so essentially, this is another moment where you have to kind of utilize your knowledge of prompting to actually invoke this tool. So what events are currently, what events are occurring in downtown Nashville in the upcoming week? And sometimes this will take a little bit of prompting, but let's see if it just by default, wonderful. You see that it doesn't have a good idea in its LLM mind of what's going on. It goes straight to the tool and it utilizes Bing. And so there we go. We can check and see if that is right. I'm tempted to. If someone is just really wanting to do that, we can check and see. Actually, I'm curious. Does anyone know if any of these things are true? But it is utilizing Bing.
The Preds games that popped up on mine are true. Interestingly, I'm getting some different responses than you have.
Yeah, so it does utilize the entirety of the conversation as you are generating new information. And so I'm sure that that's a component of the prompt that it utilized in order to actually put information into Bing. And so I think that is also interesting, but it's also sort of a good thing. Something else that I sort of love about when it does use Bing is that it is going to grab some links sometimes, so we can navigate to them. So here we can see where it got some of its information from, and we actually have the source. And so it's actually easier, oh, go us, anchor down. And so for us, then it's easier to actually check on these things. Oop, oh, there we go. Oh, whatever reason, something's going on with that. I'm not going to worry about it. All right, so now we've seen a lot of the functionality that's going on with our OpenAI ChatGPT. Again, you see that it's a little bit more full featured than some of the other commercial platforms that we have, but this is why we're talking about OpenAI today, because it has lots of functionality that we like. So now that we're here, and we are enjoying OpenAI and chatting with it, we're going to talk a little bit more about prompting in general before we go into the actual OpenAI assistants. As a side note, you see that a lot of my conversations are saved. Not all of them are saved. And so if you get into this moment where you don't want something saved, you can just go to your name here. You can go to settings in beta, and you can select the sort of things that you want. I would encourage you to look around this. One, if you have access to plugins, this is something that people build to augment the functionality of ChatGPT. Usually these are plugins like looking and using Bing, which is something that we didn't have originally, using specifically TripAdvisor or Kayak or what have you. This is where you can look at and manage your controls as we are going on to saving these chats. If you turn this off, then it will no longer save your upcoming chats. I'm just going to go ahead and enable that back. Some of them I just don't have in the history because I just don't like that sometimes. Oh, lastly, the one thing that we didn't talk about is this notion of custom instructions here. So remember that this is ChatGPT, it's interacting directly with you. And so because of that, you can set these custom instructions that will apply to ChatGPT. So it applies to how ChatGPT will respond to you in the future. So what types of things that can we set about ChatGPT? Well, what things about us that would help it to provide better responses. So maybe I would say, you know, I'm a faculty member and my background is in computer science. And maybe if I ask it things about social psychology, then it will need to explain that to me like I'm 5 because I have no background in that. So I would probably want to put that information about myself here. So when I start asking it questions about physics or whatever have you, it will know to explain it, whatever it is, like I'm 5. Also, we have this how we would like ChatGPT to respond. This is a great place to put information like explain things step by step, or if you're not sure, make sure to look on the web to confirm your response before responding. Information like that, those are great things to put here. And so therefore, we can guide the general behavior of our specific ChatGPT based on us. All right, before we move on, any further questions? Oh, as a side note, we just talked about plugins a second ago. There may be a plugin actually available to you that allows you to download the entire conversation, but that's definitely something to like look at. I'm not sure that that exists, but it seems like it would exist. I know one of our collaborators was telling me one day that if you were working pretty much exclusively in something called Code Interpreter, when it was just known as that, there was an extension that allowed you to very, very easily and with high fidelity download the entirety of the Jupyter Notebook. So there's probably some plugin out there that can help you with that. All right, so coming on back, let's talk a little bit more about prompting, because sometimes prompting itself can be an art when you really need to get something and it seems like ChatGPT or whatever you're using is just not responding. Oh man, this did not update, but that's okay. So when you receive the slides, there will be a link to Jules' course, which is on Coursera. It's actually in the breakout room document. Also, Jesse's paper alongside Jules and Doug and other researchers at Vanderbilt, I believe it was the seminal paper on prompt engineering. It is also linked in the breakout room document, and it will be linked here once I re-render these slides. The last bullet point, which just says literally another paper. This is the one that we're going to talk about a little bit more with Jules' course and Jesse's paper. We already have a number of different resources for that, including recordings and workshops that we've done in the past. And so for just another perspective, we're going to focus on a little bit of a different paper, which is going to say the same things, but just in different words. All right, so the paper that we're going to be looking at is called Principled Instructions Are All You Need. It has a little bit more there. Okay, and let me send you that link. Oh, and I closed the chat instead of opening it. There we go. This is another great paper to read in addition to Jesse and Jules' paper. They're specifically talking about Llama and GPT 3.5 and 4. They've done a number of experiments at the end to sort of discuss the impact of how they have done their, like the kind of prompts that they have used and developed. Let's see. Oh, we went a little bit too far. Coming back. But here we can see some of the just principles that we have. And again, you're going to want to keep that paper open because we're going to be using it for our breakout rooms. But before that, let's just talk at a very high level of what their design principles are. Essentially, it's what you would think it is. Like, so when you're talking to people, for example, number one, you want to be to the point and clear about what you're saying. You don't want to be overly vague in your conversation because then you get vague answers or answers that you don't, that aren't relevant for you or don't apply. Their recommendation is to not include very like sort of polite statements like, would you mind? Or thank you for blah, 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 blah. Now, do I find that to be very difficult? Yes, I do. And so often I am, very polite with it. And I'm just gonna look past that because they deserve our politeness. Anyways, that's either here nor there. But essentially, you do want to get to the point and not be overly verbose in what you're saying to it, because sometimes that makes the answer a little bit less useful. Also, if you have things that you want to have it base its answer upon, that is a really great moment where you do want to use that upload of context. Also, we know that from yesterday, some of these models have very long context. And in fact, if we could copy and paste the entirety of the paper into the context. And that's something that we could also do. In terms of task alignment, we want to be specific about what we actually wanted to do. Sometimes, like as we're talking to other people, we have an underlying sort of understanding of what we're talking about. That isn't something that you should assume for ChatGPT. You want to be specific about what exactly it is that you need. This, for example, comes up in teaching. You might say that you want a lesson plan, but you might need to be specific about the contents of that lesson plan so you actually get back what you want. Something that I've also found very useful is that providing it examples and samples are very helpful if it is not coming up with the kind of statement that you want. So for example, you're trying to write an email to someone and you're trying to have just the right tone. It helps that if you could go in your email, find a few examples of where you did have that right tone. Providing them as examples in the context of the model can help the model look at those examples that you've given and then emulate that same sort of tone and style in a new email. Something interesting that they introduced in this paper was a notion of avoiding bias. And so they said that because bias is going to be built into our large language models because of the data that we have used to train them, because that data is coming from us as human beings who are also biased. The way to try to combat that is to try to use language when you're talking about subsets of people or different demographics that actively combat the bias. So saying things like not taking it or make sure to avoid stereotyping and base your answer on the general population or something like that. Lastly, I think one of the most important things is this notion of incremental prompting. Always remember that you are not talking to Google. It is not a one and done. It is an ongoing conversation. So again, just to say this one more time, if your first statement of prompt elicits a response that is way off base, that is when you want to start over with your prompting so the conversation can be sort of in the right area. Otherwise, if it's sort of in the area that you want it to be and it's giving you something close to what you want, continue the conversation. It's like guiding an assistant on what you need them to do. You just don't tell them to do the one thing. And if it comes back wrong, you're like, well, start over. You tell them what's wrong about it, how you need it fixed, and you ask them to augment or change their work. All right. So they've also divided this paper into a number of different kinds of categories of prompts. And again, I don't think I'm going to go into overly amount of amount of depth about this. It's kind of mirroring a lot about the entirety of the principles that they propose. But in their paper, they have a lot of different principles, but they can be kind of distilled down into different categories. Again, about structure and clarity. Something that also is in Jesse's paper is about using the audience. So if you're, trying to explain something to 6-year-olds, that's something that you want to put into your prompts. If you want to explain physics to a 6-year-old, then that is something that you should add into the prompt. Otherwise, it might explain it at a level that is more appropriate for high school students or college students. Something that leverages the capacity and the training of these language models is if you use something called output primers. So let's say that you are writing that email and you just put in the first half of the email, and then you start the next sentence and you ask it just to continue that email. That is leveraging the baseline functionality of something as a large language model. That's what it's best at. And so by using that, you can sometimes get a better response than you otherwise would. Something that I have surprisingly seen that is also really helpful is actually using delimiters. So what does that mean? Essentially, you could type something as one huge paragraph, or you could break it up into separate paragraphs. You can add, so if you're trying to describe something with a title, it has a number of other elements. You can actually put the word title with the colon and give it the title, and then add things like you would to another human being instead of to a computer. Yeah, when we give things to each other, they're not usually just one big old long paragraph. They're broken up into things that make sense. They have headers. They have, you can't really do underlining in ChatGPT, but they have like bullet points. And so things like that, actually, surprisingly, I found to be pretty helpful when interacting with our LLMs. Something that is also very interesting that has been noted a lot recently is providing incentives and what could be described as disincentives to the model for producing certain things. So that falls under the content of your prompt and the language style. Sometimes if you say things like, do this thing and I'll give you like $200, or do this thing and you will win, blah, 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 blah. Or if you say something like, I need you to scrape this blah, 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 because it's really important for this, that, and the other, and my job depends on it. Sometimes the LLM will choose to actually do those things when it wouldn't originally, because you have put this incentive or this notion of pressure onto the LLM. Also, if the LLM sometimes really isn't getting it, repeating yourself helps. So saying like, I really need this explained for a middle school student, and then say whatever you're trying to say. And then at the end, say the middle school students will benefit from having this like said to them in a language that helps them understand. And so putting that information that you think is important several times into the prompt can also be really helpful. There are also other different categories. In Jesse's paper, he talks about something called the flipped interaction, which is absolutely fantastic. It's really helpful for the students here in particular, if you're trying to learn something, or if you are not quite sure what is needed for the task and you want the LLM to elicit from you what it will need to do the task. This is a really great way to engage with the model. So let's say that you're trying to write some Python code. You don't even know where to start. You would say that I'm trying to write some Python code to do this specific thing. Ask me questions about what you need and I will answer them. And when you have enough information, then perform the task. And so that's something that's really helpful when you're not sure about the extent of information that's needed. Lastly, we already talked about samples and examples. If you needed to learn something about logical reasoning, you can put a number of examples that illustrate that logic. And then in terms of coding, that is also really great whenever you are using this interactive nature of your LLM to have it actually modify its responses based on what you actually need. Sometimes, as this says with complex tasks, it is better not to tell it everything that you like, the full span of what you want in one prompt, but to actually break that up over a number of prompts. Sometimes what you can do is tell it the overarching goal and then say you want it to do this specific subtask, have it answer. If you need to make any changes, make the changes, but then give it the next task. So we can try some of these things out together. Oh, and something about this paper, just so that we know, this paper does not take into account some things about DALL-E and code interpreter and internet access, but we've already discussed that in the sense that we know that with our prompts, we can use the same sort of principles of specificity, of the things that we want to get it to actually use the tools that we're after. So use the language relevant to the tool of what you want it to utilize. So let's go through a few examples of this. So in thinking about prompt structure and clarity, the whole point of that is just to make clear structured prompts. So for example, we might give a poor prompt, which would be something like, let's say we want it to explain quantum mechanics. A poor prompt might look something like this. So just explain quantum mechanics without going into the complicated stuff. Let's see. I might have to invoke our friendly astrophysicist on staff to tell us whether she thinks that this is understandable for her, and then I can tell you if it's understandable for me. Let's see. So this is already getting to be a little bit long. That's when we might want to decide to do, give it, tell it to get to the point. All right, so here, if we are trying to explain this to someone who is like a child, if we're using words like superposition, they're already going to be a little bit struggling with that. I would say that maybe this is actually pretty okay. Maybe what instead we could do would be to specify that we want this to actually be applicable to beginners. So let's just like look at this with our eyes and think about it, read it, and let's see if we have any improvement from starting from a different prompt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear this one by essentially just starting a new conversation, new chat, exciting. And so instead, I'm going to use a little bit of a more specific prompt, which is explain the principles of quantum mechanics in a way that is easy to understand for beginners. So let's see if we do any better here. Oh, we have some emotional support that it starts off with. We're still using words like superposition. Oh, but we do get some examples here. A coin spinning in the air. I think all of us can visualize something like this, and then it relates it. That is really nice. We get some more explanation here. We do talk about a little bit of the entanglement, although we get some nice quotes here. Spooky action at a distance. This could be a bit better than what we had before. Let's see. Let's try another one. I have a few examples here. Let's try if we want to have it maybe rephrase something. And I guess we'll just do a direct prompt for an email. And so here again, we're like pulling in the delimiters. I actually can't remember if you can just press enter directly and get like a new line. I'm always pressing shift enter because that's usually what I'm pressing when I'm coding, but we'll give that a try. So we want this to just be an email. For whatever reason, we're emailing this, and let's see, let's see what it writes. So let's see, it's writing an email. It is nice that it switches this out into an email, sharing thoughts on their market, blah, 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 blah. Nice, very good. Now, let's see if we wanted it to be something more specific, like instead we wanted it to be perhaps more formal. Let's see what it would write instead. So I'm just going to take this, I'm going to copy it, new chat. Oh, copy too much. Okay, write this for an email to the chancellor. Let's see. So this is looking a lot different than what we had before. So just by being a little bit more specific about our audience, being more specific about what we actually want, then we can see that we have a different result that might be more appropriate for our purpose. We can already see like the more formal tone, the different kinds of language that is used, even the different format of the email. So now, oh, it's 11:50. So now we're going to take actually the next 10 minutes and just pop into a breakout room and just practice this a little bit. There's lots that's going on here. And this would be a great moment had this, I'd be able to get this like posted. Anyways, so what you're going to do when you go into your breakout room, it's going to be about 10 minutes and then we'll come back at like noon. But you are going to explore the usage of some of the prompts and principles in these papers. So I want you to think about some of the actual prompts that you've made in the past that maybe didn't work great in what you were trying to achieve, and then try to actually add in some of the different principles that you might be able to utilize in order to get a better response. So I'm going to go ahead and recommend trying to get so if you've ever run into the past about something the model wouldn't do, although it is completely fine for the model to do it, I would say trying incentives and disincentives, adding imperativeness, or that something is really important. If you find that something is not giving you a really good answer, or it's not being in depth as what you would want, you might want to use things like think step by step, A few other examples are here, but you're not going to be able to see them. I'm not sure about how I can best get this in to you. I can put this in the breakout room document. But here are some examples that I will actually throw in that. So let's see. Let's see. I'm going to try to dig up that breakout room document just right quick. I'm going to grab the link. Oh, it's just really opening in the wrong places. All right, here we go. Here's the link to the breakout document. It will be about 10 minutes of a breakout room. And you're, again, just exploring how you can write better prompts, particularly focusing on if you can think back to a time where you just could not make something happen. Try to see if you can utilize some of these other prompts to actually make that happen. I will also, again, copy and paste some of these examples at the very end of the document. So if you don't have any ideas currently, then you can go ahead and use those. All right. If you really don't have ideas and you're thinking about maybe doing some coding, this is a great moment to leverage ChatGPT to better understand the notion of coding and how to do it. It might be a great moment to ask it to write you code for LangChain, which is something that we will talk about very briefly. All right, so do we have our breakout rooms ready? All right, so we can go ahead and open them up, and I'll see you in about 10 minutes.
And Sejan or Dan, do you need help getting into your rooms? Great. I always want to say, go to your rooms, but it's never appropriate. I'm loving this, Shara.
Oh, thank you. It's a fun thing to talk about.
And we can use this recording for the class. You know, a bunch of these we can use for the class and just say, hey, your assignment is here. And then, and frankly, for like the first like 2 assignments, it can be like, watch this, take a quiz, watch this, take a quiz.
I like that. I like that.
But we're going to talk out, we give ourselves a break and then we're going to meet and talk about the class. And I had Miguel send out something earlier this morning to everybody saying, hey, even if you missed the previous days, be sure to make it for the final day. We're going to be talking about GPTs. And so everybody got that.
Okay, perfect.
Is Jules joining us for the last little bit, or it's just you, Jesse?
No, he is not available. So
Did you still want to do those last little bit?
I'm,
Or are we going to let Jules just do that in a separate workshop?
I was going to do a separate workshop.
Okay, perfect. Okay, great.
If that's okay. That's
No. That's what I was thinking. Just making sure.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna need to speed up.
Yeah, no, you're good. Because all this is like, yeah. Because even though we don't have all these capabilities in his stuff right now, we will. And people do need to know about this. And then, yeah.
All right, we are on our way back. I think we have 60 seconds for everyone to come on back. All right, it seems like some people are back. Let me check who is still in their breakout rooms. Yep, some people are still chatting. I'll wait for them to come back. All right, I think that we are all back. All right, so a quick question. For the breakout rooms, did anyone find that any of the prompt principles were particularly effective? Thoughts? Let me navigate on over to that breakout room.
So this is Bill. I guess I could say one of the things we didn't get too far exploring a specific example, but we did start iterating on it. And so this idea of incremental or iteration and like, oh, wait, no, change this. Oh, I forgot to add that. So add something else in. I think that's just clear, right? It's got to be more like you were saying that several times. It's got to be more like a conversation with somebody.
I think that's such a great point, and thank you for saying that. I think some people have visited ChatGPT and been like, oh, this doesn't work at all. But it is because they forget that it is a conversation where you can guide the LLM to what you actually are wanting. Other thoughts? Any particularly powerful principles that you found? Got some alliteration going in that. Particularly powerful principles for prompting.
We were interested in exploring the idea of, sort of like back propagation, or however you say, where we find out what the prompt was that generated that, and then sort of reformulating from that perspective. But like Bill said, we didn't get super far.
Gotcha. No, I really love that. I think one of the ways that I love using these LLMs is after I have a conversation with it when I'm trying to do something, I ask it for the prompt that would result in a similar sort of response as to what I've just gotten. And then in the future, I use that prompt. I think that's just a great usage of the LLMs. Thank you for bringing that up. Any other thoughts? All right, great. Well, we are at 12:05. Let's take a quick 5-minute break, and then we will come back and talk about AI assistants. Super excited. See you in 5 minutes. All right, folks, welcome back. Welcome back. All right. And I see we have a really great question in the chat. Someone said, I was trying to get GPT to spell US dates backwards. It was incredibly bad. Did the model perform poorly because it uses tokens, not words? It could just be an issue of, remember how we were talking yesterday about the different kinds of instructions that we give it? For that, I would be interested to see if you were to give it those examples or give it sample answers. So you would say that, you would give it that prompt and then say, here are a few examples of what I mean. Inputting Arkansas, you should respond Scranskars. And then for Delaware, you should respond Ewilar. And so maybe I wonder if using that, so the examples or samples approach can help it to answer a little bit better. So that's a really great question. I want to try that myself. All right, so let's talk about AI assistants. And this is something, again, that is really powerful. We've seen many people use it in really interesting ways. And the fact that it requires no code is particularly powerful. So let's just take a look. So I'm going to share my screen right quick, entire desktop. Desktop, there we go. And Umang, I'm really grateful that you said that you're drawing that distinction between the behavior of 3.5 versus 4. Often 3 or 4 will be more performant than what we see of 3.5, especially for some more challenging tasks. All right, so we've already seen a portion of this diagram where we were talking about GPTs in general. So just rolling back over there right quick. So this is what we saw in terms of when we are interacting with our own ChatGPT, as you see here, these are the capabilities that we have. Moving right along to AI assistants. So we actually have something very similar. So this is precisely what we were looking at before, where we have all of that functionality. So we visit the site, we ask it questions, we're able to upload these documents and interact with our ChatGPTs, right? So now when we create our AI assistants, though, what we do is we actually are able to configure our own ChatGPTs or GPTs. So we have this custom behavior that we're looking for. So the assistant that we would create, and I'm going to call them GPTs or assistants, these custom GPTs or the assistants, when the users use them, they will have all of the functionality that you normally see with ChatGPT, except for we will have configured them to have certain very specific behavior. So something that you can notice here, this is what we were seeing before. Users are no longer able to have custom instructions. And why is that? That is because we will configure our own custom GPTs to have the custom instructions to guide the behavior of how we want it to act. Even beyond that, we're able to provide it with these backing documents. So let's say that, for example, I run a lab. So I have my own lab or I have my own team. And often I onboard students onto my team. There are a number of tools that I have in my lab. There are a number of procedures that I have in my lab. I have manuals. I have all of the instructions, how-tos, the things that I have written in the past to get these students onboarded into my lab and get them working very quickly. So that is what I might call a knowledge base. I can upload and configure my own GPTs to have this back-end knowledge base that it can leverage to answer any of the questions that my students have as they are using the GPT that I have configured. Now, that does not mean that they can't upload their own documents. They still can, but there are these backing documents in the background that I specifically have uploaded so that now they will have access to the lab manuals and all of the how-tos that I have already written for them. Okay, so I give it custom instructions. I tell it how to behave, how to answer questions. Maybe I want it to be supportive of my students. I have some backing knowledge that it can use when it's answering questions. I can also enable which tools that I want it to be able to use. So let's say that I wanted to have code interpreter. I can enable that for the assistant. I can enable the internet lookup, and I can enable image generation. Similarly, I can disable all of those things or any of those things. Finally, something interesting is that they have these custom actions. So let's say, for example, that when when the students say to my lab GPT, hey, I need to create a template for the custom printer that I'm using or something like that, my GPT can make a custom call to an external API or some external platform to actually make that thing happen. So there are custom actions that are not built into ChatGPT that I can provide to my GPT so it can do those extra things that a regular GPT could not. So it's pretty exciting, number one. That lab assistant, the PI in a box that I just described, that's a real thing that people have made with these AI assistants. And in your breakout room later, you will go into a room and kind of discuss with people in your organization, on your team or whatever, how you can use this. But before that, we're going to try these things ourselves. So dropping a link. So this is where we're going to go to actually create our own custom GPTs. You're going to go to this editor, and so you can go ahead and click that. Unfortunately, I'm not 100% sure if you have this other way to access it. So I'm going to show you another way just in case you do. Usually I start at this exact interface and then I go to my name and I go to my GPTs. And so interestingly enough, I have made a number of GPTs. So you'll see them here. Here are mine. But then also I can create a GPT. And so this will lead me to the same page that I sent the link to directly. All right, so another thing that I love about this is, again, no coding is required, but even beyond that, there's this GPT builder interface where it provides you essentially an assistant to help you make your own GPT. So let's say that I actually do want to make that lab assistant GPT. So it's saying you can tell me very simply what it is that you want. I'm just going to write, I want an assistant, or we'll just use the same language that it did, make an assistant who can onboard and train students to use Word in my lab. You can see that it's already doing something back there. It's trying to actually provide these custom behaviors. As you saw with our regular GPTs before, they had those custom instructions. So again, we're not having those whenever we're using the GPTs, but we ourselves are configuring the behavior of this thing by creating these instructions. And when we are working through this right here, that is precisely what we are doing. We are allowing some backend assistant to help us configure the custom behavior of our GPTs. So we're going to go with this custom name, Lab Mentor. That sounds good. This is regular natural language. So you too could say, I hate that name. That's terrible. I want it to be, I don't know, Einstein friend or something. So you can see that it's invoking literally its own DALL-E to help me generate a profile picture. Even as all of us on Zoom, most of us have profile pictures. We have those things on Slack. We have them on university websites. Here, this is what is generated for me. If I hated this, I could also iterate on that as well. Maybe I will iterate on that. No, we won't do that now in the interest of time. So we're just going to accept this. So now we're getting into the true kind of custom instruction components of our mentor, right? So we're telling it now, so it's asking us about what we want from it. So it said that it's for onboarding and training students. Are there any specific things that I should focus on or any specific tasks that it should be exceptionally good at explaining? So it should be great at explaining step by step how to use different softwares and how to use common data science tools. This includes tools such as NVDev, Git, GitHub, let's just go with that. So now you can see that it's updating the GPT. When it's saying that, what do you think that it's doing? So I'm telling it the things that I want from it. What do you think that it's doing when it's updating the GPT? What do you think it means by that? Okay, you continue to ponder what that means as we go forward. And then if you have any ideas, just drop it in the chat. So now we can talk about the things that it should emphasize or avoid. Are there any responses or content that should be prioritized or excluded in this interaction? Should it avoid technical jargon or emphasize visual explanations? When explaining concepts or steps to students, or steps, it should first explain as if it is explaining to a beginner. Then it should essentially translate this into the more technical jargon so that the students understand the meaning of this jargon. The assistant should also be very friendly, encouraging, and supportive. Assistant should also be concise and not. So someone says they think that maybe it's generating prompts to its general GPT. I really love that answer. We're going to take a look at that. So when we're thinking about the custom instructions, some of these questions that it's asking us are sounding a lot like the fields that we saw for custom instructions. And so it's likely that it's generating prompts that are actually filling those custom instructions and writing it better than what we could otherwise write. Someone said, is it honing the transformer architecture, like revising the weights assigned to different embeddings? That is a strong, strong question. A great thought. Generally, if this was doing actually changing the weights, you would expect this to be running for a very long time and to be also very expensive. So right now it's really leveraging that first stage that we saw when we're thinking about customizing our own LLMs. It's really leveraging that first step of making really, really great prompts so that we won't have to go into that really intense training step. So now it's asking us even more questions. Should it ask for more details? Should it try to provide the best possible answer? It should ask for more details about the question, making sure that it is answering the actual question that is answering. However, this should not go on too long. Give the answer based on the information given if the student doesn't appear to understand what it is. More updating. Trying to get our prompts to be exactly right. It should use casual language so as to not intimidate students. On the right over here, you can already see that we're already getting to the point where we are making our lab mentor. So there you see its name. You see that it's already created a brief description of itself. We can ourselves begin to just now start to interact with this. Tell me more about using a microscope, for example. Do I use microscopes? No, but we're gonna let this one. Oh, wow, unlocking a tiny hidden world. That's really great. Wow. is kind of long. So in a next step, something that I might think about is actually, is to actually make this more concise. But this is actually really great. I might just leave it like that. So if I'm thinking that this is really great and I love it, wonderful. Something that I can do is just be happy with that, and then I can save it. Thinking about saving, okay, this is an assistant. And so I can use it as a user. Like I've already configured it now. I can use it as a user, but I can also share it with other people. So I can publish it to only me. I can make it shareable to only my lab members, or I can make it available just to the general public. So for now, I'm just going to share it for only me, and I'm going to go ahead and publish it and save it. And as you can see over here, right now, it was just a draft. So here it brings me to something that looks a lot like our regular ChatGPT interface. And when anyone else visits it, it'll look, again, a lot like that ChatGPT interface. But what they will be interacting with would be our configured assistant lab mentor. So again, when your students or whomever gets to using it, they have all of these capabilities as normal, where the behavior of this GPT is guided by how we have actually configured it. So let's say now that I'm just like, I don't know, I don't love it. I want to allow it to do different things. I can edit this GPT again. So one, we can go back and like say anything that we want to change about the lab mentor. So for example, if I really didn't like it, that it was going and talking too long or whatever, I could change that through prompting it. But something important to look at is not just this create tab, but this configure tab on the right. And so this is the secret sauce. So name, description, exactly, we can edit those things as we like. So remember how we were providing it all of those prompts? We were answering all of its questions. Bill nailed it when he said that it is creating this sort of system prompt. And so this system prompt is what is guiding its behavior. It's like those custom instructions. And now after we have given it all of the instructions that we want, we can see that it condensed all of that information into something well phrased that it can actually act upon. When we go back to this create tab and we tell it more and more things, what's happening is that it is adding on and changing the system prompt to make it actually into what we want. So you can see in this prompt right here, I didn't write any of this. It used what I gave it to create the prompt to have the mentor act in the way that I want. So again, when you're using these assistants, you can specify these little buttons that people might press to begin with. So maybe if you have a few, like 4 things in this example that I want my students to just look at to begin with, how do I use Git? I could instead change this to be that. What are the steps of using Git from the command line? For example, you can see that this updates here. And then I could change those to be more appropriate for quick access. Here we see the beauty of more configuration. So here we can upload again those knowledge files. One more time, just to say it one last time, even though I probably will say it again. The files that we're uploading here are in the configuration. This does not preclude users of your assistant from uploading their own files. So this is what is guiding the behavior and is reference for when people use your assistant, but people are still yet able to upload their own documents for reference. So let's say that I give this to my students, and then one day there's a new software that we start using. So maybe I haven't added that into my lab mentor. My student can go, they can attach that and then start asking questions about it, and it will answer from the perspective of what it has been configured as. So again, we want to give it this background information. Maybe we want to give it exactly, I don't know, an example piece of information. So here are some responsibilities that I might give as backing information. So if students ask, well, what do I need to do? What does this look like? So this will have those answers. So I just uploaded one PDF. You can upload lots of PDFs. I've seen other people upload different types of images and diagrams, particularly because they're looking for particular kinds of output. So this student was looking for a particular kind of format of a network diagram. And so he uploaded images of what are good diagrams and what are bad diagrams. Again, we talked about how we had tools that we can enable or disable. We can see in our configuration, we can enable and disable these three things. We see those three things right here. Web browsing. So if you don't want your assistant to be able to browse the web, you'd unclick it. So I'm going to enable it. I'm also going to enable DALL-E, image generation, and I'm also going to enable code interpreter. Code interpreter is something that you should generally enable, in my opinion. So that may not be true for everyone, but in my opinion, and that is because it allows you to do math, do data, and work with those things. A student was, so someone that was working with this assistant, they were trying super hard to do segmentation on cells. And so they had this whole vast swath of prompts where they were just saying, you need to like add bounding box. And it was like, I can't do that. I can't do that. And the reason is that they didn't have code interpreter enabled. Whenever they enabled code interpreter, it was able to view the uploaded images. It was able to draw bounding boxes around certain mitochondria, and then it was able to output code that would help the student do that if they wanted to do that in Python in some IDE. So code interpreter is really great for scientific explorations, but more generally, I would just have it enabled if you think that at any point you're going to do any kind of computation. Here we can see the actions. So in our GPTs, the regular ones, we don't particularly have this capability. Here we can give it our own actions to do. And so this is something that you will generally need to look a little bit more at. Number one, you can see that it's asking for a schema. The schema is an open API schema. So not an open AI schema, but an open API schema. And what that means is it's a standardized format. Because it is a standardized format, ChatGPT can help you write one. So what we can do is we can look at what are these actions, like give us an example. So one is this weather. So here you can see an example of what the schema is going to look like. What this thing is doing is it is retrieving weather data, and it is utilizing an API elsewhere in order to get that weather data. And you can see some of the specifications that we need here. And there are, in order to invoke this, you can see that if you say something like, I need the temperature for blah, 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 then it might go ahead, then it'll be likely to invoke this custom action that you have defined. Let's look at another one. Here we might have our own pet store API or website. And so we might want to get information about, I don't know, pets at the pet store, or I don't know, inventory at the pet store. We can provide, again, this schema that will allow us to access that server and then get the information that we want from it. So here you can see that kind of definition. Again, this is kind of looking like a lot, but because it is an open API schema, this is something that ChatGPT can actually help you to write. You can see this is also looking, so if you're familiar with REST APIs, this is truly giving REST API. And so this should be more interpretable from that perspective. And finally, if you actually need to utilize authentication, so maybe everyone just can't access this thing for, you know, like whatever API that you have, you're able to add your own authentication. Maybe it's an API key, maybe it's OAuth authentication. My brain is going directly to Brightspace, even though it's unlikely that that is something that we'll actually be able to use after talking to them with these actions, maybe here or there, maybe in the future. But if you need authentication, this is something, a way that you can add it. I would also encourage you to actually take a look at what they have said in terms of, oops, let's get back down there. Nope, it actually used that. It's okay, we're gonna end this up. We'll just leave it. Oops, sorry, I just keep clicking. Okay. So they have an additionally, under these actions, they have the capacity to look at the store, if I could just get to it, but I can't. So at the bottom here, it's probably cut off, but there was a little thing that says more information on actions. And so you'll be able to look at it there. There we go. finally, these additional settings. So, you know, they're giving you some options in terms of how you want your data to be used in terms of training. If you don't really want it to be used in terms of training, you can unclick this, and then that will remove you from being in this data in the training. And then from there, we have this all configured. Again, we can update this. We're going to leave that as only me. And now we have our additional settings. So I'm going to look at it a little bit more. Exciting. And now I can actually start using it. So maybe I can use, what is the general timeline? Okay, data science project. You can see it invoking the knowledge base that we have uploaded. And this is precisely what was in that document. So this was exactly from the knowledge base that I uploaded. If we were to open that document now, you would see pretty much this exact thing. All right, let me think if there's anything that I've missed. No, I don't think so. Again, if you want to be able to access your GPTs that you've made, you can go to My GPTs, and you will be able to see them here. So something to think about now, okay, is how you can use these. So we provided some examples, but I can provide just a few more. So one, you can consider the fact that you can upload a lot of documents as a knowledge base. From the perspective of teaching, we all have syllabi, we all have coursework, we all have lesson plans, we have our lesson content, we have our lesson notes. Maybe we want to do something a little bit more innovative when it comes to our assignments. So this might be a great moment for whoever is teaching, if that seems of interest, to generate different kinds of assignments that the students can take, or even provide this as a resource, provide this assistant as a resource for your students so that they will actually be able to interact with these documents, give themselves quizzes. So you can have them give themselves quizzes based on your own information that you've uploaded. That might be a nice use case for people who teach. You can think of people in administration, for example. If you have a lot of documents, again, for onboarding that are publicly available or they are appropriate to put on OpenAI, this may represent a great way to have new employees learn how to do the things that are important in your actual organization without having to constantly go to a supervisor to ask these questions. You can also think of, you know, anything that has a lot of documentation. So let's say, for example, if there's a course catalog and you want students to be able to more easily interact with this course catalog, this may be a great moment, because the course catalogs truly are publicly available, to use this assistant so that the students can ask questions about the course catalog. There are lots of different things that you can think about in terms of using these AI assistants. And so we're going to give you that opportunity. Right now, we're going to go into breakout rooms. Now, I would suggest that if you have someone else in your organization that you see that's here that you want to talk about what kind of assistance that you could make or how they could benefit you, maybe just quickly prepend your name with whatever organization that is, so you can like go and talk with them in the same room. But in these breakout rooms, they're going to be about 5 minutes. We're going to just brainstorm ways that you think these AI assistants can benefit you or benefit whatever that you're trying to do. Some students have built assistants for their lab where they upload RNA documents and it performs statistics on them. We have students that upload the story of their relationships with their colleagues or their other friends, and it draws network diagrams of those relationships. So there are a lot of different ways that you can think about these assistants. And I think this is a great moment to be able to discuss this with your colleagues, with your friends, with whomever, about what you can do with this. So we're just going to have, I think we're going to have a 5-minute breakout room. Umang needs time to talk about LangChain. So maybe a quick 5-minute breakout room and then just discuss. And I want to hear from a few people when we come back.
You know, if we want to, we could say, Uma, you give like a really high level and say, stick around into the office hours if you'd like to know more about LangChain.
Oh
Maybe
yeah.
just like do like a stub, you know.
Yeah, I was mostly just gonna kind of walk them through the docs page,
Mhm.
show them all
Mhm.
the awesome notebooks we had for AI summer, and then
Nice.
specifically show like how easy it is to implement RAG with 4 lines of code.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a lot shorter than this, but I should know
No.
by now that I never am.
But it shows them great engagement, right? You know, when they're asking so many questions.
And good questions.
Mm-hmm.
All right, it looks like we are coming in from the extremely short breakout room. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Does anyone want to quickly talk about what assistance they're thinking about? What could be beneficial? Thoughts?
I guess I could speak for me and then a little for our room. I think we ended the conversation in a very interesting, different place, but I was able, while having lunch and listening to you, to make something that could search a database of astrophysics papers, and it was returning links and things for certain time lengths and certain keywords. And it's like, wow, okay. And that was 10 minutes maybe of work. So good on you, Shiro. You got me there. But the interesting thing that came up at the end was conversations about if you could use this to analyze the human to human communication in labs and groups and try to find, I'll say it in my language, because find the weaknesses or try to repair where communications is kind of poor. That's the way I say it. Actually, I think Alyssa and Shanika said it much better. But so I thought that was fascinating. I know some companies specialize in that and charge oodles of money for it. So yeah, it was an interesting idea.
I'm starting to suggest that people record even in-person meetings using Zoom so they can actually get summaries and do an analysis of and task lists and things like that. Absolutely.
Other thoughts? Also, Bill, that's so cool. That's so cool that you just made that. What a great application. That's really cool. Other thoughts? All right. Well, feel free to chat with us more during the office hour. If you have ideas about assistance or are thinking about how you can use them or will need help in formulating, I'm going to pass this on over to Umang. I've taken a lot of his time already. So sorry about that, Umang, but take it away.
All right. So thank you for that, Charo. So I'm going to talk about this thing called LangChain. It started off as a Python package that pretty much serves as an alternative, a programmatic alternative to this that will also allow you to kind of take all of this a little bit offline, with the caveat that if you still end up using something like ChatGPT or any of the OpenAI models, it is still going to send your data out. So if you are able to hook up LangChain with a local model, it would be a perfect alternative to this that would allow you to take everything offline if you're dealing with any sort of sensitive data. So let me just share my screen real quick. All right. So this is the LangChain documentation page. It has vastly changed since the last time I saw it. So there's a lot of new stuff here. But it started off as this Python package that allows you to interface with large language models in general very, very easily. It was really designed for people who really didn't have that much programming experience and allowed them to build LLM-based applications with very, very little amounts of code, which is really this stuff here, which are the chains, the agents, and the advanced retrieval strategies, which basically refers to RAG, and some of the stuff that we saw in the GPTs. Since then, they've expanded LangChain massively. We have something called LangServe now, which allows you to interact with all of this through APIs. So if you were building a slightly more robust application, you could also hook up your LangChain chains and all your RAG through APIs, and then LangSmith, which allows you to monitor how your application is working. I've not personally used these two, but if you do get into building really, really robust applications, these two will serve as a really helpful tool to expand from just simply using LLMs in sort of a notebook environment. If you do want to kind of take a little bit more of a deeper dive into LangChain, we do have our AI Summer GitHub repository, and I'm going to put this in the chat. This should be available for you to look at, but we have 3 notebooks here, LangChain, talking about LangChain, week 3, day 1, 2, and 3, that go into tons of details about how to use LangChain and the various tools that they provide. Just to kind of show you how really simple it is to use LangChain, I just wanted to kind of go over this real quick. So imagine you had any sort of large language model here. I'm specifically calling OpenAI, but this could be just sort of a function that allows you to inference with just any local model. But here, if I define an LLM as the OpenAI, now it's going to use ChatGPT 3.5 by default. All I need to do is pass in some text, say what would be a good company name for what would be a good company name for a company that makes colorful socks, and just pass that over to the LLM. And it's as simple as just saying print LLM text, and it would give you the response right then and there. So they've made it really, really simple to interact with these from a programmatic standpoint. And they also allow you to set those sort of system prompts and give you prompt templates that will allow you to really define how you want your LLM to act. So for example, if I have a prompt template that says what is a good name for a company that makes blank product, and the input variable is product, all I really need to do is pass in a prompt format and say the product is modern clothing, and then print it. And this is what the prompt will look like. And again, I can pass that to an LLM and it will give me an answer for that. So they've made it really, really simple to kind of replicate some of the basic functionality of GPTs when it comes to creating system prompts. And you can spend a lot of time defining what this prompt template looks like, and they've given you really, really good information on how to do that in their documentation. The biggest, I guess, powerful aspect of GPTs is the ability to do RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation. Basically, what that looks like is if you had a set of documents and you want to be able to answer questions off of that, you basically create some sort of a repository of those documents and then just ask questions off of that. What that looks like in practice is you first have to load your documents using this thing called a document loader. And then you need to split them up into smaller chunks so that you're able to kind of search over them easily. You want to convert all of those now chunks of text into embeddings so that the model can actually kind of use them. And then you also want to store them somewhere so that this is not something that you have to constantly do. So imagine you had 50 documents about astrophysics. I split them up into smaller chunks so I can deal with them slightly easier. I converted them into embeddings, and then I stored them in this thing called a vector store. Basically, what this is a numerical representation of all that data that you had. So all those 50 documents have now been converted into this n-dimensional space that contains basically a bunch of numbers that are representations for all your documents. And then all you really need to do is hook that vector store up to this thing called a retriever, and then simply use that LLM as you did earlier and pass in your question. So what that would look like is if you had this sort of vector store, you'd give it a question, you'd retrieve the document that you need based off of the questions, you'd give it the prompt, you'd send all of that to the LLM. So the document, the relevant document and the prompt to your LLM, and then you'll get an answer. It is really that simple. So if we were to kind of look at this from the perspective of code, it's just these 6 or 7 lines of code. So you install a bunch of packages, you import a bunch of stuff from LangChain, and then pretty much all you do is load your text. Here I'm loading, as an example, I'm loading the State of the Union that Joe Biden gave, I think, 2 years ago. And then I'm splitting that into a bunch of smaller chunks so that they're easier to use. And then I'm just actually splitting them here. And then here I'm creating a database. Chroma is one of the providers that creates a vector store. But essentially what I'm doing is I'm taking those documents that I split up here and passing them to Chroma. I'm also passing in an embedding function from OpenAI. And now what this has done is it's created a database vector store that is persistent. It can be stored locally or it can be stored online, pretty much wherever you want. And then pretty much all I need to do is pass a query saying, what did the president say about KBJ? And then I do a quick similarity search on my vector store, and it finds the most relevant pieces of information from all of my documents, grabs them, passes them over to the large language model, and then you can either just print what it got from the vector store, or you can pass that information to a large language model and it can condense it for you and give you a sort of more comprehensive answer rather than just returning the actual document. Whether or not you choose to use the actual large language model part of this itself is very, very useful, because now you can just sort of do a similarity search across a large number of documents very easily. This is a very quick process. And now it took, about 1,000 lines of text and was very quickly able to figure out, okay, this is the part of the document that talks about Ketanji Brown Jackson. And now I can just grab that information easily. But it is really that easy. They have given you a lot more information down here. They've given you vector store-backed retrievers, time-based retrievers, so that it retrieves the most recent set of information. So there's a lot of different things that you can do here, but it really is a couple of lines of code that allows you to make something as powerful as the GPTs that Shara just showed us. Imagine if you had a structured database that is SQL backed. It's, again, just as simple. You take your question, you pass it to an LLM. There's a SQL agent that exists through LangChain. It will automatically write for you the SQL code. It will grab the right sets of information, pass that information back to an LLM, and then the LLM will give you a response. And again, it's very, very simple. Couple of lines of code. There's your database. You connect it. Here's your LLM, and then here's a database chain. It's the SQL database chain. It says from LLM, you pass it the database, you pass it the LLM, and then you just run the chain saying how many employees are there. It writes its own SQL query, it returns the result, and then the LLM converts that result into natural language and says there are 8 employees. So it's really simple, really straightforward, and you can do a lot of powerful things with this. A couple of questions during the last couple of days came up about what if I want to connect a large language model that is local to the internet. That is also very easy, using sort of their document transformers and the web-based loaders. So imagine I have a question. I send that question to the internet using the Google Search API wrapper. It finds the documents, or I guess the HTML pages that are relevant online. It converts them, transforms them. It either sends those to a vector store if you want to save them, or sends those results directly to your LLM, and then the LLM gives you a response. And again, very, very straightforward. Here's your document loader. Here's the Wall Street Journal that I'm going to. I load that stuff. It downloads all of those as an HTML document. Beautiful soup, transforms them into something that I can use. And then here's the page content. I can see this is like all the stuff from the Wall Street Journal's front page. And then it's pretty much as easy as passing it to an LLM after that. And then you get your responses. Let me see. There are a couple of other things that I wanted to talk about. Right. Sometimes you want to also create sort of a chatbot out of large language models. Again, very easy. LangChain has these things called chains, and these chains are very powerful. They combine a lot of different tools. For example, the concept of a memory, or the concept of being able to perform math on a bunch of information. But again, it's very simple. The conversation chain is something that has this concept of a memory sort of embedded into it. All you need to do is pass in your large language model to it, and then start having a conversation with it by just saying predict. And then it is just, it's that simple. You just say hi there. It talks to you like a regular chat bot, and it keeps that history of conversation. As you can see here, it's keeping the entire current conversation, and it will continue doing so until it runs out of context length and starts forgetting what happened at the beginning of the conversation. And there's also something called an agent. This is another big part of LangChain, which allows you to sort of connect tools to your large language model that would allow it to do math or some sort of internet search. So I can load these tools. I'm here loading a DuckDuckGo search and LLM math search, and I'm also passing in my large language model, which by default is going to be GPT 3.5. And I can pretty much just initialize that agent and ask what was the high temperature in Nashville yesterday. And it will do all of its search. It knows that it now needs to do a DuckDuckGo search. It says high temperature Nashville yesterday in Fahrenheit. It finds all of that information using DuckDuckGo. I also in this place asked it, convert it into Fahrenheit or do some math on it. It uses the LLM math tool to realize, okay, I need to use the calculator tool. I'm gonna actually do the math there, return the answer, and then the LLM just does all of that work in the back end and says the temperature in Nashville raised to the power 0.23 was 2.7, which is I think 2.7 degrees Celsius.
And
So
at the top of the hour, so if you want to
yep. That is kind of like a very, very, very fast crash course through LangChain. There is excellent documentation here. You can spend hours going through here. The documentation really seems like it's never ending, so you can do a lot of powerful things here. But feel free to stick around if you have more specific LangChain questions during office hours. Happy to kind of walk you through a little bit more stuff. But yeah, that's LangChain.
congratulations, everybody, for making it all the way through the AI winter. And some of you have actually even created some of your first solutions. So thank you so much for joining us for the AI winter. Remember that we do have our drop-in hours on our AI Fridays. So you can join us at the Data Science Institute, which is at the formerly Sony building, now called the 17th and Grand building. Love to answer any questions that you have, especially as you dive into this. But we're going to move into office hours now. So anyone who has additional questions, please feel free to stick around. Otherwise, congratulations. Thanks for spending some time for us at the beginning of the new year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kanji. Thank you. Absolutely.
Thanks so much, Jesse. I'm going to send you an email with some times for us to
Perfect.
start thinking. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hem. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks, Jesse. We'll be in touch as well.
Excellent. Boy, yeah, we got some exciting stuff to talk about, don't we?
Yeah. Also, I went over to the new building today. Looking
Yeah.
good.
Didn't it look nice? I know. And we're going to be neighbors.
Yeah, we're
I love
probably
that.
going in next week also, so we'll be able to pop down real easily. Not everybody, just a couple of us.
Okay, great. And we're having our open house on Friday,
Next week.
next week.
Okay, great. I will try to stop by then. Awesome.
Excellent.
Take
All right.
care.
See you.
I may have missed this. I had to step away for just a minute. Where is the recording going to be posted? I especially like to look at this day's session again.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too, actually. So I'm going to I'll ask our events assistant to post the link. It'll be on YouTube.
Awesome.
And we'll also put the links to the different materials there as well. So team members, if you have materials, collecting the materials, any links that you want to have, send them to Miguel, and we'll make sure that they're in the comments section of the YouTube channel.
Thank you so much. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you, Michael. Nice meeting you. See you.
Likewise. Bye-bye.
Yeah, just want to reiterate my thanks. I was completely AI illiterate from at the beginning, and I actually kind of understand a little bit about the architecture and generating prompts and where to look for more information. And then I'm even generating my own prompts. So I'm very excited. I mean, generating my own, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're very excited. Thank you guys so much.
Absolutely. Very, very happy. Thank you very much for joining us. And thank you for all the great questions and conversation that makes it so much better. So thank you for all of your comments and questions.
I feel like even if they're stupid questions, maybe someone else is thinking of them too. So.
Exactly. And they're
That's great questions.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, I think Jesse and Shara, and you guys know this, I sort of try to get to every one of these workshops. Just making my own chat GPT assistant is just like, okay, mind's blown. And thank God there's this like putting in your own instructions. And now I'm thinking, well, sometimes I want instructions, like make sure the paper exists and the references are real. Other times I may not. So now I'm like, well, I could just make a chat GPT assistant with a certain number of instructions or something. It's like, what?
It's amazing.
No, and even if you're the only user of it, right? It's so easy to put together. It's like, well,
Yep.
Why not?
Yeah, I
And
mean, if you spend a week or two on something, you better be sharing with people in your group or something. But yeah, 15 minutes. What the heck?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's amazing.
No, I'm thinking we're going to start putting together some of these GPTs for some of the more technical things, and even with our consults, like how do I get involved with the, I have this project idea. How do I get involved with the, with the DSI, or I would like to be part of a project. What do I need to do? Well, tell me a little about your background, all those things, just think of all the meetings that we won't have to have.
Yeah.
And so the meetings that we do have are going to be it's going to like, all right, I've done all the things. Here's, it's so worth the investment.
This is another one of these examples, like I'm definitely a gray-haired older gentleman, but it's like, man, the kids in college are going to grow up with this stuff.
I know.
And it's going to keep getting better. I mean, I've seen that just attending your stuff over the years. It's like, wow.
Yeah, because you've been at a lot of these. So I mean, compared to where we started, what we could, because already the things we could do was like, wow, but now it's just like, oh my God.
Exactly.
Yeah, the other part, yeah, running on my laptop is good. By the way, use case, I think probably you guys have done this. Is there a local model I can use so I can talk to my laptop? Weird, okay, and have it be typing into a chat GPT or a GPT assistant or something like that. Has anybody done that? So I want speech to text, headed to a GPT.
We haven't done that. There is a phone. So if you have the paid version of ChatGPT Plus, you can do that with your phone app.
Oh, okay.
So the phone app actually has audio in and audio out. I use it when I'm driving. Because I'll ask questions, because you pass by stuff and you say, hey, those weird signs in southern Georgia, that talk about zombie and God, tell me about that church. And it's like, oh, you're probably referring to, so
Oh, I love that idea.
yeah,
Okay.
well, absolutely.
Phone app download right now.
And then as far as building it locally, you can. There's nothing that's out of the box, but you could use LangChain. You might have to make an API call out. What do you all think? API call to Whisper if you're going to be using that. Trying to inference Whisper locally would not be fast enough, I don't think.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Okay.
They also do have Distill Whisper though, which is like pretty small. I heard it came out and it's on it's on Hugging Face. That might do it. But
You could also use your on-device sort of dictation feature like on Macs. It's beautiful. It does really well on device, speech to text, and then just text push it to GPT.
yeah, that's what I do.
Cool.
Right. Oh, and sure, I'll put a link to Shanika, who was here just a little bit ago. Shanika Rollins-Robertson. So she's clinical director of ICU EEG. She's assistant professor in neurology.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
We've got all these different cool people.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I was in a breakout room with her. Yeah, she was interesting to get to know.
Yeah. And she was like starting from scratch that's what I love about this. I mean, we have people who just have not, so Bill, we have you who've been like along for their journey. And then we have other people who've been like, they show up for the very first time. That's so exciting.
I see.
Oh, my Linux Zoom. I got a new laptop and I put Linux on it over the holidays and then added all the usual Zoom things in. It's like, for a while there, it looked like you hosts were blocking me, so I couldn't unmute and start video. It's just, and Zoom used to be sort of odd, and then on Linux it was pretty good, and then I downloaded the latest version, and okay, a few hiccups. Why not? It's the Linux world. Well, I very much appreciate you guys putting these things on, and yet it's genius to do it both this time of year and sort of a few hours around lunchtime, so you catch lots of people depending on time zones or whatever. And the introduction, and then you're advertising all your other stuff, and it's like, yeah, good on you. So. And so good eats and drinks next Friday, because I just put you on my schedule.
For the open house?
Yeah, for the open house, sorry. I said that. So the Astro people are getting, so, physics department, the Astro and some math folks are moving also into Sony. And September they were saying by Thanksgiving, and then they moved it to December and January, which made no sense, and now they moved it to sometime in the summer, which gives them time. But anyway, so I don't think I'll have an office there, but I'll be visiting people over there a lot. So,
oh yay! We hope to see you lots.
Definitely.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's great.
I'll look at the board you're going to put up, which will tell me all the latest updates for the day on all these models.
And there's so many every single day. You look up and there's something new.
Oh man, I thought physics was hard to keep track of. You guys, it's amazing. So, but you master one tool, and I guess luckily the good thing is tools evolve from each other. Like if you mastered like whatever came before LangChain,
Yeah.
some Python GPT thing, and it's like, and now LangChain, that looks better and easier.
Mhm.
All right, well, I'll let you guys go. Thank you very much. And yeah, I'm sure to have conversations with many of you about different things. So
Fantastic.
thank you.
See you later,
Bye.
Bill. Take
Bye.
care.